Jennifer, do we have change? Are you going to do those slides? What I thought I'd do, you're gonna hear about the 4 divisions of the chamber, which are economic development, advocacy, membership, and community betterment. What I thought I'd do is talk about economic development in a kind of a 30,000-foot view, because I know that's an interest to a lot of people, and it's very important to this organization. It's been front and center in our organization almost the entire 100-year history of the organization, and so it's a team sport in New Braunfels. That's why you see all the different logos there. Not one entity is in charge of economic development, but we really treat it like a partnership. You've got the city logo there on the left-hand side, the chamber's logo there, which, by the way, next year for our 100th, that logo has been tweaked a little bit. We're going to unveil a new logo for our 100th anniversary. Then in the middle there you have our Economic Development Foundation, which is a private sector organization founded about 14 years ago. Then you have the state of Texas, of course, with Comal County being a partner in New Braunfels Utilities. So, next slide. So therefore, the way we divvy this up, a lot of partners, we don't want to be stepping on each other's toes. We want to be partners and teammates, but we want to be moving the ball down the field and doing different jobs. The chamber acts as the recruiter and marketing organization for the community. That's our role, and we go out and promote New Braunfels either in tourism or to employers, primary employers, to move here. The city is the contractual, regulatory, governmental side of the coin, incentives, things of that nature. They provide the financial, legal, and accounting guidance. And they appoint a 7-member board called the New Braunfels Economic Development Corporation. You've heard it called the 4B board. There was an editorial in today's paper about the 4B board. They use a portion of the sales tax funds voted in by citizens to help us go after some of these companies. So that's how the organization kind of sets up. Next slide. Now, who do we go after? Well, every community is different in the types of companies that it wants to invest in, but this is a listing of some of our what we call target industries. Notice the last one on there. You won't find the music industry on many cities' targeted primary employers list. Why in the world would we do that here? This was added about 10 years ago because of the prolific music industry that we have developed here over the years with Green Hall, Whitewater, River Road, downtown, etc. We have a lot of named musicians that reside here, and when they reside here, all their suppliers and vendors cluster around them. So that's what this is all about, is enhancing, and this industry pulls in new dollars, and that's the definition of economic development, isn't it? It's bringing in new dollars that weren't here before into the marketplace, and the music industry certainly does that for us. Next slide. I mentioned the 4B board. It says NBIDC. They changed their name to the NBEDC about 2 months ago, the New Braunfels Economic Development Corporation. And this is a slide that shows how they spend their funds. They receive a little over $5 million, $6 million a year in sales tax funds. So they invest it wisely. A lot of publicity is given to the incentive side of the coin, but as you can see, it's only 21 cents of every dollar. The majority of the funding that they receive goes into quality of life and public infrastructure investments. If you've been to Fisher Park, if you've been to Landa Park, if you're going to be driving on the new Loop 337 widening project or FM 306, you can thank the 4B board for investing in those projects. If you've been in the public library, 4B dollars paid the debt service on that public library since it was built there on Common Street. So a lot of good things are done. You'll notice the professional services area, which is the smallest slice of the pie. That's accounting, legal, marketing, recruiting. All that we do is only 6 cents on the dollar. The average in the other 700 communities around Texas is 15%. The reason ours is so small, other than we don't make a lot of money here at the chamber, is the fact that we have a private sector foundation that splits the cost of all of these expenses with the 4B board. And so the community goal was, let's put the majority of the money into projects in town. And so if somebody thinks that bureaucracy eats up the money of the 4B tax, you could tell them that, well, 6 cents on the dollar is a pretty good deal. Next slide. And this is some more of the projects. Again, shows business incentives, infrastructure, professional services. This is the dollar amount of each one of those over a period 1996 to 2016. Next slide. And I think you have copies of these, right? We can make them available.
Not today, but if
Yeah, if
you
anybody's
ask an
interested,
email,
we can
we'll
make
get it to
these
you.
available to you. This is all public record stuff. This is a slide that we did, a look back on some of the 21 cents on the dollar that I told you about with incentives. What does it create? Here's some of the things that it did on these 17 different projects. And roll to the next slide, Jennifer. I think this shows it even better. Created $213 million in total taxable property. It was just $5.8 million invested over that 10-year period to bring in $213 million. I wish my 401k had that kind of return on it. So it's a good deal. Taxable revenue over 10 years of $58.5 million. Next slide. And so the jobs created by these incentives since 2011, you could see that the vast majority of them, there's by zip code there, that we try to get as many local citizens employed as possible. And so that's why we do what we do. One thing that I took a little bit of, well, not offense, but I talked to the newspaper publisher today, but if you read the editorial on 4B, the second paragraph said, incentives and businesses is what's basically making the population grow in New Braunfels. Because when you do give incentives to businesses, then subdivisions and housing happens. Wrong. It's just the opposite. Over the last 20 years, the paradigm has changed in this country where people move to where they want to live and then they look for a job. And so that's why we invest the majority of the funds in quality of life and public infrastructure. I think about 99% of the companies that we brought in my 30 years here only brought about 2 or 3 people with them when they came from out of state, and they hired the rest of them from right here in this area. So that's something that maybe the paper will correct in a future issue. We'll see. Next slide. Here's some of the new developments that you may be familiar with. Of course, the new recreation center got a lot of ink the last few months. It's now open there on Landis Street, and your 4B board invested nearly $6 million in that project. Veramindy, they've invested in road projects in there. Creekside, West Point Village shopping centers, none of those would have happened without the 4B board. Cummings Sports Park in the May 2019 bond issue, that will be supported by your 4B board. The Loop 337 widening project, Canadian General Tower, and on and on and on. Next slide. Here's some logos of the companies that have been assisted through the years. I think some 11,000 jobs in my tenure have come into New Braunfels during that time. You may be familiar with some of these companies. Some of your neighbors may work there. You may go to church with some of these people. But next slide. And some of the quality of life and infrastructure investments. Next time you go to the Brontex Theater or Circle Arts, some of their expansions were done using 4B dollars. Central Texas Technology Center, both in Phase 1 and Phase 2, were supported by these sales tax funds. I mentioned Landa Park and Fisher Park before, the recreation center, Little League fields, on and on and on. Next slide. Oh, that's all my slides. So that's a 30,000 foot view of economic development and why this chamber has been very involved in that in its 99-year plus history. And our staff here in these different departments, what they do roll into that. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. You're a member of a great organization. We're proud that you've joined the team. We want the economy to grow. If the economy is not growing, there's not going to be customers and new money to assist your business. When you hear people say that we don't want the town to grow, I always tell people, well, we're not in the population game. We're in the wealth per capita game. And so that's why we're here, is to bring in more money into town to help your business grow. So with that, Phyllis, we'll go on to the next presentation. Thank you very much.